Walking through London Heathrow's Terminal 2 in 2024, you might notice something that wasn't there before. A quiet prayer room with washing facilities. The same thing is happening in Amsterdam Schiphol, Frankfurt Airport, even LAX in Los Angeles. Western airports are racing to install prayer rooms with proper ablution facilities, and they're studying one airport that got it right decades ago, Kuala Lumpur International Airport, which opened with fully equipped prayer rooms in 1998. Before we dive in, if you find this interesting, hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more curious minds like yours who love discovering the hidden stories behind everyday spaces. Assalamu alaikum. Here's what most travelers don't realize. KLIA wasn't just adding a nice feature when it opened those prayer rooms. It was solving a massive logistical problem. Malaysia had 20 million Muslims in 1998. That's roughly 60% of the population who pray 5 times daily. When you're designing an airport that handles 25 million passengers a year, you can't ignore basic needs for more than half your travelers. The prayer rooms weren't optional. They were infrastructure. But here's where it gets interesting. KLIA didn't just build one prayer room and call it done. They installed prayer facilities in every terminal. Multiple locations per terminal. Each room came with proper wudu areas featuring foot-level washing stations, separate sections for men and women, prayer mats, Qibla direction markers. They even positioned the rooms post-security, so transit passengers could use them without clearing immigration again. This wasn't charity. It was intelligent design. Fast forward to today, and airports across Europe and North America are scrambling to catch up. Not because they suddenly became generous, because the numbers changed. Muslim passengers flying through Western hubs jumped from 12 million in 2000 to over 160 million in 2023. That's a 13-fold increase in 23 years. When Amsterdam Schiphol gets 71 million passengers annually and roughly 8% are Muslim, you're looking at 5.7 million people who need to pray. You can't ignore 5.7 million customers. London Heathrow figured this out after watching passengers pray in corridors, gate areas, literally anywhere they could find floor space during prayer times. The airport realized they had a problem. Not a religious problem. A space management problem. People praying in random locations created bottlenecks, blocked walkways, made other passengers uncomfortable. So in 2017, Heathrow opened its first dedicated multi-faith prayer room in Terminal 2, with ablution facilities. Because they finally understood what KLIA knew in 1998. If you want people to use designated spaces, you need to provide the complete facilities, not half measures. Frankfurt Airport went through the same evolution. For years, they had a generic room of silence with no washing facilities. Muslim passengers had to improvise, washing feet in bathroom sinks, creating awkward situations with other travelers. Some missed prayers entirely, rather than deal with the hassle. Frankfurt conducted passenger surveys in 2019 and discovered something revealing. Muslim travelers rated their airport experience 2.3 points lower on average than other passengers. The main complaint? Lack of proper prayer facilities. So Frankfurt invested 1.2 million euros upgrading their prayer spaces with proper ablution areas. Not out of cultural sensitivity, out of competitive necessity. Because here's what changed the game. Gulf airports exploded. Dubai International became the world's busiest international airport. Doha's Hamad International opened with jaw-dropping prayer rooms that look like luxury lounges. These airports didn't just accommodate Muslim travelers. They courted them aggressively. And they started winning. Turkish Airlines, Emirates, and Qatar Airways grew their European transfer traffic by offering superior passenger experience for Muslim travelers. Munich Airport watched 800,000 passengers per year shift to Istanbul connections instead of Munich transfers. That's 800,000 passengers choosing Turkish Airlines over Lufthansa. That's billions in lost revenue. This is where the Malaysian model became suddenly relevant. Aviation consultants got hired to study why Gulf airports dominated Muslim passenger satisfaction. They kept pointing to the same thing: complete facilities, not token gestures. KLIA became a case study because it demonstrated something crucial. When you serve Muslim passengers properly, you don't just satisfy one demographic. You improve overall passenger flow. Those prayer rooms in KLIA keep foot traffic organized. They prevent crowding in other areas. They reduce stress for a significant passenger segment, which means fewer customer service issues. It's pure efficiency. Amsterdam Schiphol studied KLIA's layout specifically when designing their 2022 prayer room expansion. They copied 3 key features. First, post-security location so transit passengers can access it. Second, proper ablution stations with foot-level faucets, not bathroom sinks. Third, clear signage in multiple languages. These seem obvious now, but Western airports spent decades getting this wrong. They'd put a prayer room pre-security where transit passengers couldn't reach it. Or they'd build the room but forget ablution facilities. Or they'd hide it with such poor signage that passengers couldn't find it. Singapore Changi Airport watched KLIA and went further. They didn't just install prayer rooms. They designed them to be among the nicest spaces in the airport. Wood paneling, ambient lighting, quality carpets. Because Changi understood the same thing KLIA knew. These rooms aren't charity. They're product. When a Muslim passenger flying from Jakarta to London compares a Singapore transfer versus a Paris transfer, and Singapore offers vastly better prayer facilities, that influences routing decisions. Multiply that by millions of passengers, and you're talking about market share. The economics became impossible to ignore. A 2021 study by MasterCard and Crescent Rating found that Muslim travelers spent $220 billion on international travel. By 2028, that number hits $300 billion. These aren't budget backpackers. These are families flying business class, professionals on corporate accounts, premium passengers. Exactly the demographic every airport wants. And this demographic has specific needs. They pray 5 times daily. They need washing facilities. They prefer modest, private spaces. Any airport ignoring these needs is voluntarily surrendering a massive market segment to competitors who don't ignore it. Paris. Charles de Gaulle resisted for years. They had philosophical objections about secularism and public religious accommodation. But then they watched Air France lose lucrative Middle East and North Africa routes to Gulf carriers. They saw Muslim passengers actively avoiding Paris connections when possible. In 2023, Charles de Gaulle quietly opened its first proper prayer room with ablution facilities in Terminal 2E. No press release. No fanfare. They just built it. Because ideology is expensive when competitors are eating your lunch. Los Angeles International Airport faced pressure from a different angle. Local Muslim communities and interfaith groups lobbied for prayer rooms for years. LAX installed a multi-faith room in 2016, but without proper ablution facilities. It took until 2023 for them to add washing stations after realizing the original design was barely used. Because Muslim passengers needed the complete package, not a quiet room. This pattern repeated across North America. Toronto Pearson, Vancouver International, Chicago O'Hare. They all learned the same lesson. Partial accommodation is worthless. You need the full KLIA model, or passengers will ignore your facility. What makes this shift fascinating is the speed. These are massive infrastructure projects. Installing plumbing in existing terminal buildings costs serious money. Prayer rooms need specific orientation toward Mecca, which isn't always architecturally convenient. Retrofitting older terminals requires creative engineering. Yet airports are prioritizing these projects now when they deferred them for decades. The change isn't ideological. It's financial. The business case became overwhelming. KLIA's 1998 design is now the global template. Post-security access, complete ablution facilities, clear signage, separate gender sections, prayer time displays, quality maintenance. Western airports are literally copying the floor plans. Aviation design firms now include Malaysian-style prayer rooms in their standard airport proposals. What was once culturally specific became industry standard. The ripple effects extend beyond airports. Train stations across Europe are installing prayer rooms. Shopping malls in non-Muslim countries are adding wudu facilities. Universities in Western countries are building dedicated prayer spaces. Because the same logic applies everywhere. When you have a significant population with specific needs, meeting those needs properly improves operations for everyone. It's not complicated. But here's the irony. While Western airports race to install what KLIA built in 1998, KLIA itself keeps upgrading. The prayer rooms in KLIA 2 feature smart displays showing prayer times, automated fragrance systems, touchless faucets, climate control. KLIA turned its head start into continuous improvement. They're not resting on the 1998 model. They're staying ahead. This story reveals something larger about global infrastructure development. For decades, Western airports set the standard everyone else copied. Duty-free shopping, fast food courts, business lounges. The rest of the world imported those designs. But prayer rooms flipped the script. A Malaysian innovation from 1998 became the global standard 25 years later. Western airports are now importing Malaysian design thinking. That's a meaningful shift. The transformation is still accelerating. Frankfurt Airport announced plans for 3 additional prayer rooms by 2025. Heathrow is expanding facilities in Terminal 5. Even smaller European airports like Copenhagen and Stockholm are installing their first proper prayer rooms. The competitive pressure is relentless. Every airport that adds superior facilities makes neighboring airports look inadequate by comparison. What KLIA demonstrated in 1998 is now conventional wisdom. You can't be a global airport hub without serving global passengers completely. Prayer rooms aren't special accommodation. They're basic infrastructure, like bathrooms and water fountains. When 26% of the world's population is Muslim, ignoring their basic needs is just bad business. Western airports spent 20 years learning this lesson. They're finally catching up to what Kuala Lumpur knew from day one. So next time you walk through a Western airport and see a shiny new prayer room, remember, that's not innovation. That's imitation. They're copying what KLIA built when Windows 98 was cutting-edge technology. Sometimes the future arrives first in unexpected places. Sometimes the rest of the world needs decades to notice.